You know what I just realized that I haven't talked about in a long time on my channel is video games. So screw it, let's talk about a whole bunch of them at once. Now, with a lot of people having to create a top 5 or top 10 games of 2013 video, I personally don't see it as rather unfair of me to do that sort of list because of the fact that I had to go on a 4-month hiatus during the course of this last semester. So I thought, instead of doing it for 2013 just specifically, why not do the entire 7th generation of consoles? Now, there are going to be a couple of qualifications to go onto this list, at least for me, to make this a little bit more fair. Number one, I'm only going to put this on the list or talk about it if I have beaten the game from beginning to end. If I have not played a certain game or just haven't finished it, I'm not going to bother mentioning on this list because my opinion could change from one point of the game to the next if I haven't seen everything for it, and I just don't want to make a judgment on something I haven't finished yet or haven't seen yet. Just make that clear. Just because I don't put a game here that maybe you like or maybe you really do care about, that doesn't mean I dislike it. It either means I haven't finished it or I just haven't played it yet. So just keep that in mind. Second, if I'm going to conclude a whole franchise or a specific chronology of certain stories, then I'm going to bunch them all into one spot. And third, I'm only going to do this in alphabetical order, meaning that I really can't put like, oh, well, I like this game more for this particular reason over this one for another reason. I'm just going to go through this list in alphabetical order and just say, like, look, these are the games that left the biggest impact on me, that I enjoyed playing the most this particular generation, and I just had a lot of fun with going through all together. Now, there are going to be several games I'm going to go through. I guess you could call it an honorable mentions section if you're going to use a similar terminology, but to be fair, these are games that I don't think fit the honorable mention category. These are games I equally love as much as the rest of the ones I'm going to actually talk about. But the thing is, I feel like they're so good that I just want them to speak for themselves. And I don't feel like anything I could say could do justice in the short time frame that I have. So without further ado, I already have a list ready to go. So let me go ahead and list off the ones that I feel like are equally as awesome as the ones I want to talk about. But for the sake of time, I'm going to compress it. Starting off with, in alphabetical order, is the Bioshock franchise, Castlevania Lords of Shadow, Fallout 3, Infamous 1 and 2, Lost Planet 1, the Mass Effect Trilogy, Metal Gear Solid 4, Red Dead Redemption, Super Mario Galaxy, Tomb Raider, StarCraft Wings of Liberty, and Heart of the Swarm, and the Uncharted Trilogy. Now that we got those out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the ones that I actually want to talk about. First one I'm going to talk about is the Assassin's Creed Ezio Trilogy. How could I not put this one on the list? I mean, as a history buff, I got to experience one of my favorite time periods in the Italian Renaissance. I got to travel through a virtual Venice, Florence, Rome. I got to climb the freaking Pantheon and the Colosseum. How freaking cool is that? And the Santa Maria del Fiore. I got to interact with Niccolo Machiavelli, Leonardo da Vinci. I got to fight the freaking Borgia family. How freaking cool is that? I mean, seriously, there were so many points in the Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations that I just enjoyed overall, and Ezio as a character I just felt like is the ultimate assassin, or the coolest assassin in my book. You actually felt like you were becoming the head of the Assassin Order, and for that reason alone, and for just the fact that I could live as a history major, live in this time period for just a brief moment of my life, and just see what this world was like, and having it put a fictional spin on it, I couldn't be happier with the Ezio trilogy. Moving into mythological badass territory is Asura's Wrath. Where do I even begin with this one? I mean, this is a game that was literally given to me as a recommendation by a friend of mine, Lenny, and he told me, he's like, dude, you gotta check this out, it is awesome, and as a mythology nut like myself, I would definitely enjoy it. And I picked it up one day, I put it in my console, I literally sat down and played it all in one sitting. Not because it was short, but because I was so enthralled that I couldn't put it down. I'm just thinking, this is so incredibly insane and awesome. The music is all fitting. The character of Asura is awesome. It's just the scale of the insanity. You think that it can't get any crazier, and yet when it does, and you're just like, screw it, just go as balls to the walls as you want. And moments on the edge of my seat where I was just pressing the buttons as fast as I could to just go berserk over the game. I had a lot of fun with Asura's Wrath, and I'm just glad that I was able to experience it before this generation came to an end. Keeping the insanity level high, but moving into the sexy, dominatrixy-ish territory is Bayonetta. I swear, Platinum Games has become one of my favorite developers in recent memory, and Bayonetta is the ultimate Platinum Games title in my mindset to date. I mean, this is a reminder, at least this game in particular and Platinum Games to me are an embodiment of the idea that while it is great that we are having video games that take the medium seriously, it's okay and it's fine to just go completely insane. Just to go as unapologetic, as sexy, and as badass as you want, never apologize for it, and just be yourself. And with Bayonetta as a character, I'm just thinking to myself, I would never want to be on the wrong end of this woman in an S&M club. It is so much fun with Bayonetta. I had an absolute blast using every weapon, just watching her be so unapologetic with her sexuality. I know a lot of people may not find Bayonetta as appealing as I do, but for the given over-the-top nature of the entire game itself, and the fact that the final confrontation is literally cosmic level of awesome, I could not help myself but being completely enthralled and having a blast with Bayonetta. I'm really glad that there is a sequel, even though it makes no friggin' sense why it is only on the Wii U, but that's another rant for another time, and I've already complained about it in my normal life, so I don't need to do it here. Either way, Bayonetta, I'm glad that you are here. I'm hoping that your sequel is equally done just as well. Take me down to the Paradise City, where the grass is green and the girls are pretty, and you get to drive the friggin' DeLorean and blaze trails of glorious fire. That's right, Burnout Paradise is next on my list. How could I not love a game that literally just plops you open an open world and says you got point A to point B, get there as fast as you can using whatever car you've got. I mean, there's so many things about Burnout that I just love. The fact that it's just the most chilled game I probably played this entire generation, mostly because of the fact that I sunk so many hours into it. Literally every day during high school, I think for about a year, I literally just sat down in front of my TV, and whenever I was stressed out, whenever I needed a moment to just relax, I'd just pop in Burnout Paradise and just drive. And I think this was right before I got my driver's license, and it got me used to the idea of using driving as a form of catharsis, as a form of relaxation. Just riding around motorcycles and Camaros, or fictional cars. And then when they gave us the fictional car set with the DeLorean, the Knight Rider, the Dukes of Hazzard, it's just so cool. I couldn't help but love Burnout Paradise and just take a joy in Paradise City. And now we shift gears from moving around in Paradise City to going into the apocalypse with the Darksiders franchise. This is a franchise that at first when I heard about it, I considered it a serious threat to my own work because given the fact that as a game creator or someone who wants to be a game creator in the future, I am a little bit worried that it might steal from potentially one of my biggest franchises. And so I was a little apprehensive of picking up Darksiders. Then I played the first one, and then the second one, and I really fell in love with the universe of Darksiders. There's so much mythology, there's so much just rich texture and environment to this world, and it's just mythos is so big, especially with the introduction of the second game. I just felt like this world feels so much larger than I originally thought it was. Not just a typical angels versus demons conflict, but it also made this world much larger than I thought it originally would be. And the fact that it took a concept of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse and actually made them to be sympathetic anti-heroes. I thought that was really cool, and Death is a badass. I'm not going to kid about that. So Darksiders, I'm just thinking, like, this is so awesome, and I just love the environment. I'm really sad that THQ is gone now, because I really wish that Vigil Games or THQ would come back at some point, but now that Nordic Games has the franchise, I'm really curious of what they're going to do with it. I've heard rumors that it's not going to come back at least until 2015, But I just really want Darksiders to come back, and I want this to be sort of like an Avengers type scenario, because I want to see what the other two horsemen were doing, and I want to see a full-on climactic battle with all 4 horsemen in the same fight, because that would be freaking awesome. Now we move on from the Horsemen of the Apocalypse to demon hunting badasses in Devil May Cry 4. Now I know a lot of people are going to say, what the heck, why is Devil May Cry 4 one of your favorites? Well, this is a little bit more personal for me than most other people would put on this list. The reason why Devil May Cry 4 is here is because as someone who was starting to hone his own personal senses into gaming, Devil May Cry 4 came around the time when I was just developing my own ideas and what I wanted to do as a game creator. And for some reason, Devil May Cry 4, for one reason or another, provided the perfect visual inspiration and just tone inspiration for what I wanted to do. And it's like, you know what? I like this. So I like this environment. I like this mythos. I like this type of scenario. And I like Nero as a character, probably for obvious reasons if you guys can piece it together, which I'm sure you can. But Devil May Cry 4, it just provided everything that I wanted, and I just enjoyed the heck out of it. Playing as Dante and Nero, and the fact that there was also some Divine Comedy references with Dante's Inferno, Paradiso, and so on, I couldn't help but like Devil May Cry 4. This was probably the biggest surprise for me of this entire year. I absolutely loved every single thing about Fire Emblem Awakening. It reminds me of why Nintendo could be awesome. It reminds me of the potential they have to tell a good story, give me characters I actually care about, a gameplay where it actually introduced me to strategy RPGs more into my own taste. And ever since Pokemon Conquest and this one, I'm thinking I might actually like the strategy RPG genre, or the tactic RPG genre, I think it's properly called. And Fire Emblem just made me feel like I was attached to every single one of these characters. I played this whole thing 6 times during the course of this year before I had to go on my hiatus. If that game doesn't resonate with me as one of my personal favorites, I don't know what does. Now we move on to the 2 simplest games probably on this entire list. And these games, and anyone who knows me and knows my taste in gaming, I have raved about these things countless times. And that is Flower and Journey from That Game Company. These 2 games here remind me of the idea that sometimes the simplest idea for a video game is the best. You just need the audio, the visual, and just let the presentation itself and the game itself speak. And actually, that's ironic considering none of these games, neither one of these games has an ounce of dialogue. And yet they were able to convey so much emotion of happiness, fear, regret, sadness, but also bliss and happiness. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is amazing. I absolutely adore both Flower and Journey. They're some of my all-time favorite games. Another game that involves probably one of my favorite soundtracks of this entire year, especially one that helps me sleep at night and introduced me to parkour, is Mirror's Edge. What an underrated gem this game was. Now I understand a lot of people say the story's not the greatest in the world, and that's fine. But for me, it was all about the parkour elements and knowing that Faith Connors is a badass. Just seeing what it's like, the idea of you take the idea of first-person shooter and basically you don't focus on any of the shooting. It was one of those few games that I actually challenged myself to say, I'm going to go through this entire game without killing a single person or hurting a single person, and just say, like, I just want to go run. That's all I want to do. I want to bounce off walls, I want to glide on rails, I want to slide down buildings, I want to do whatever it takes to stretch my parkouring abilities to the max and just see what I can do in terms of that gameplay element. I'm so glad that it's got a sequel, and Mirror's Edge, I'm so happy the fact that you are actually the poster that is right above my head, and it is worthwhile of being one of my favorite games of this generation. Another one that's been my favorite games of this generation, and it's actually another poster right behind my wall, and that is Muramasa the Demon Blade / Rebirth. Muramasa the Demon Blade, holy crap, hand-drawn animation at its most glorious. It's just so freaking beautiful to look at. It reminded me a lot of Okami, of how visually just gorgeous everything is. It has one of my favorite soundtracks of this generation. I mean, the sound of, like, I think it's Dusky A, or Dusky Track A, or something like that, and it's just so beautiful. I was just thinking to myself, oh man, just so beautiful. That's what I'm just saying. It's beautiful. I absolutely love Muramasa the Demon Blade. It was a game on the Wii. I was just thinking to myself, you know what, I'll give this a shot, maybe it'll be alright, but little did I know I was completely enthralled with it. It is so much fun to go through Muramasa, and I know a lot of people say it's backtracking, there's a lot of problems with it, it's just the gameplay itself is not really there, but when I'm so encapsulated with the visuals, the music, and the setting, and just seeing like getting different swords all the time, and when you have to backtrack across hundreds and hundreds of different, dozens of different screens, my bad, beautiful hand-drawn animation, and just seeing how gorgeous it all looks, I have absolutely no problem with it. In fact, there were times when I just wanted to stop and just look at the artwork, and I was just sitting there, minding my own business, not doing a thing, and I just would look at the screen, because I'm just thinking to myself, my lord, that looks pretty. The biggest story I went through this entire generation, and that is the Ratchet & Clank Future Saga, consisting of Tools of Destruction, Quest for Booty, A Crack in Time, and the recent one I reviewed, Into the Nexus. This was a fun story. I had a blast going through the entire Future Saga. This to me is the ultimate set of the Ratchet & Clank series, or the Ratchet & Clank games overall. I know the ones on the PlayStation 2, they're classics, I love them. I love Arsenal, Going Commando, the original, Deadlocked as well, but to me, the Future Saga is ultimate Ratchet & Clank. We had Dr. Nefarious as one of the main villains, we had Captain Romulus Slag, we had the Prague Twins. It was so much fun just to go through the entire Future Saga, getting more into the backstory of Ratchet, really realizing the origins of his race and the Lombaxes, as well as finding out Clank's real purpose, and just seeing the dynamics of these two potentially growing apart and seeing what it was like to be thrown in circumstances they weren't accustomed to yet, at least to us as fans. The space exploration, the guns, all great. Mr. Zircon has become one of my favorite weapons in video games ever. I mean, what's better than having a smack-talking robot that hovers over your shoulder and just completely obliterates your enemies right for you? I can't think of anything others, other than the fact that the Rhino 7 and the Rhino 5 are two of my other favorite guns, and they play Tarkovsky's 1812 Overture and Night on Bald Mountain while obliterating your enemies to death. And it is so much fun, and it was funny too. Nefarious is continuing to cement himself as one of my favorite video game villains. He's just a joy to watch. He's not a very competent villain. He's just one of those villains that you love to watch. I wouldn't say love to hate, but I would say he's great to watch. And then with Lawrence as his butler, I'm just thinking to myself, if they don't bring Ratchet & Clank back for this next generation, I'm going to be freaking angry at this. So, Ratchet & Clank Future Saga, you definitely cement yourself as one of my favorite franchises and stories of this generation. From one platformer to another one, but in the case of this one, it's you don't even try to make sense of this world, and that is Rayman. Return of Rayman in Origins and Legends. Oh my lord, if I thought Muramasa looked pretty, Rayman is eye-bleedingly gorgeous. All hand-drawn, all beautiful. The soundtrack, it's lunacy. It's Rayman. It's Rayman. You don't need to say anything else. It's just Rayman. You don't even try to make sense of it. In fact, the first time I played Origins, I popped it in, I didn't know what to expect, and as soon as I checked my watch again, it was 3 a.m., and I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, I've been at this for 5 hours, and I didn't even notice it. And then my mother caught me one time playing Origins, and she asked me, what in the world is this? And I'm thinking to myself, mother, don't ask. The less you ask, the better. It's ludicrousy, it's absolute adorable charm, its soundtrack, everything about Origins is absolutely wonderful. And Legends is nothing less of spectacular in terms of presentation. The music levels are all great. I had a blast playing them. I can easily go through each one of these levels again. I would be a smile on my face the entire time. And finally, we come to the end of this list, and ironically enough, it ends on one of my favorite video game characters of all time, and probably the one that is the exact same age that I am, and that is Sonic Generations. Oh, Sonic, what a comeback this was for you. I mean, you and I both celebrated our 20th birthdays at the same time. It was something that I really couldn't wait to see. Classic Sonic come back along with modern Sonic, some of my favorite levels with the Green Hill Zone, Sky Sanctuary, Stardust Speedway, heck, even Crisis City made a return, and Planet Wisp. I absolutely adored everything about Sonic Generations. I know a lot of people say it gave us so many little nods and references to the past Sonic games, made it so self-aware of its own history, and it's just, to me, it was to kind of made me realize that I grew up with Sonic, we're both the same age, I always related to him as a character, and it's one of those cases like you watch yourself as you grow over time, and to me that's what Sonic Generations was all about. Realizing that Sonic has had a really good run, no pun intended, but it also reminded me of that he's also got a lot of life left in him. I know a lot of people don't have as much hope in Sonic as much as I do, but you know what? I'm willing to give Sonic a chance. I've always stood by him, and I'm willing to continue doing so. So Sonic, I hope you continue to be awesome in the future. So there you go, folks. That is my personal list of favorites of this past generation between 2005 and 2013. I hope you enjoyed this list, or at least this little tidbit of what my personal tastes in gaming are. I know I probably didn't give the most objective reasons, but I just wanted to do a personal list, give my own thoughts on what this is like, this past generation was for me, why I enjoyed these games for one reason or another, and tell me, what were some of your favorite games for this past generation and why? It doesn't have to be, well, I was completely in grip with this story. You just could say, well, I liked going through this game because it was fun and I enjoyed it. It just can be simple. So comment below, tell me what you think, and until next time, folks, I'm Perry the One-Armed Legend. You name it, I can play it.